Hey folks, welcome back. Tonight, we're traveling back to the dusty, deadly frontier of 19th century America, a place where rattlesnakes outnumbered doctors, and trusting the wrong stranger could get you buried before sundown. We're talking about the Wild West, but not the Hollywood version with shiny spurs and noble outlaws. No, sir. We're talking about the real West, dirty, brutal, unforgiving, the kind of place where life expectancy dropped the moment you saddled up. Before we start, smash that like button if you're into dark historical deep dives, and subscribe if you've ever wondered what it's really like to dodge bandits, sleep with one eye open, and hope dysentery doesn't end your career as a cattle driver. Now, dim the lights, pour yourself a glass of whatever you've got, and settle in, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why you would miss to survive a day in the Wild West. Imagine this. You open your eyes in a rickety wooden shack just outside Dodge City. There's dust in your mouth, a splinter in your cheek from the straw pillow, and your bed is a sack of hay crawling with fleas. Outside, the wind howls through a land that doesn't care whether you live or die. You're still not a cowboy yet. You're still just a tired, half-starved traveler in 1874. But you have already made two rookie mistakes. You drank from the creek yesterday. You forgot to check your boots before putting them on this morning. Now, surprise, there's a scorpion in your left boot, and probably cholera brewing in your gut. Welcome to the Wild West starter pack. But the real problem isn't what's crawling on you. It's what's waiting for you outside. So you have survived the night. You're itchy. Your stomach is turning. And there's a questionable rustling noise coming from beneath your floorboards. Probably rats. Maybe a snake. Either way, you're hungry. Let's talk about breakfast in the Wild West. Forget pancakes and eggs. You're still lucky if you've got hardtack so stale it could be used as roofing tile. Salt pork, mostly fat, barely meat, smells like sweaty sock. Coffee, ground with a hammer, brewed in a tin can, strong enough to strip paint, and that's if you're lucky. On most days, it's just beans. Beans for breakfast, beans for lunch, beans for dinner. And yes, everyone stinks, but worse than the food is what it does to your body. Without refrigeration or hygiene, your digestive system becomes a war zone. People died from food poisoning more often than from gunfights, botulism, dysentery, cholera, all hanging out in your breakfast bowl, waiting to take you out before noon. And clean water? Please, you're drinking from a bucket, hauled up from a well shared by horses, oxen, possibly a guy who peed in it last night. And remember, you already drank from the creek yesterday. You, sir, now on Cholera Sit's most wanted list. Full stomach or not, it's time to head into town. Your goal, buy supplies, or maybe get hired for a job. But the town, it is not built for tourists. The sheriff doesn't care about you. The locals can smell that you new. And if you bump into the wrong man at the saloon, you may not make it to sundown. You walk down a dusty street, boots crunching over manure, the heat baking through your hat. You pass a man selling snake oil out of a wagon, 3 cowboys playing cards with revolvers on the table. A prostitute smoking a hand-rolled cigarette, eyeing you like a stray dog. A preacher screaming about hellfire next to a man passed out in his own vomit. Welcome to town. Oh, and that sheriff, it's his star? It doesn't mean justice. It just means he stats the most violent guy in town with a badge. Law enforcement was often too corrupt, underpaid, completely overwhelmed. You want help? Bring money or a faster gun? So you say thinking, maybe I still buy a gun. Everyone else has one. Sure, that's just smart. Except guns are expensive. Ammunition is rarer than gold teeth. You don't know how to shoot. And if you do shoot someone, you better kill them. Because if you don't, their friends will find you. Dueling may seem romantic in movies, but in reality, gunfights were quite sloppy. It's fast, brutal, often started over eye contact or spilled whiskey, and it wasn't just bullets. You had to worry about cuts got infected, teeth rotted until they caused brain infections. A simple scratch from barbed wire could lead to tetanus, and without antibiotics, your fate was sealed. Doctors? There were some. They were also drunk half the time, using unwashed tools, performing surgery by lamplight. Believers in cures like bleeding, arsenic pills, or mercury. The motto of the frontier doctor was basically, if it doesn't kill you immediately, it's probably fine. Think the Wild West is scary during the day? Wait until the sun goes down. There are no street lamps, no porch lights, no glow from gas stations. The only light you have is from the moon, a lantern, or the fire you hope doesn't attract bandits. And trust me, nightfall isn't peaceful. It's when the worst things crawl out from the shadows. It does break it down. Wildlife roulette. Coyotes howl in the distance. Not cute, not musical. It sounds like banshees ripping each other apart. Wolves watch you from the tree line. Bears can smell your salted pork from miles away. And snakes love warmth. They so curl up in your bedroll, under your saddle, or even in your boots. Wake one up accidentally, and your last words might be, what sets that hissing? But this is just the animals, human predators. After dark, you set a target. Drifters roam from camp to camp, looking for easy loot. And bandits lurk near roads to ambush riders. Desperate townsfolk, starving, drunk, or insane, will rob you blind for a scrap of jerky or a coin. Sleeping in the open. You better sleep with your boots on. Keep your hand on your gun. And tie your horse with double knots, because horse theft is common. And without a horse, you're dead in the morning sun. Sometimes you won't even hear them coming. You should just wake up tied to a cactus. Or not at all. Firelight isn't it your friend? What's this the trick? If you light a fire, you get warmth. But you also become a lighthouse for every predator in the desert. So you have to choose: risk freezing to death or being seen. Even worse, fires attract bugs, not your average mosquitoes. I mean, clouds of biting insects, gnats that crawl into your ears, beetles that chew leather, and giant desert spiders that don't care you were here first. And without screams, sprays, or repellent, you just lie there, slapping your own face all night. So far, we have assumed you're a man. But what if you're a woman? Let me be clear. You wouldn't survive the day either, but your suffering would be a different brand of brutal. Women in the Wild West endured childbirth without anesthesia. Marriage a survival strategy. Zero rights to property or safety. Social isolation. A daily routine of hard labor, freezing cold, and potential violence. And while some women became ranchers, outlaws, or saloon owners, most had no such freedom. If your husband died, you were often left penniless or forced to remarry immediately to stay protected. Pregnancy was a death sentence for many. Midwives weren't always trained, and infections were rampant. 1 in 5 women died during childbirth in certain frontier towns. Even washing clothes was life-threatening. Think about it. Howling water from a creek, boiling it over open fire, scrubbing heavy garments in cold weather. All while wolves might be watching from the woods. And let's not even talk about justice. If a woman was assaulted, the law rarely intervened. If she defended herself, she could be punished as a murderer. But women didn't just survive. Some fought back. Sharpshooter Annie Oakley, gunslinger Pearl Hart, rancher Mary Fields, aka Stagecoach Mary, who delivered mail in Montana with a shotgun and a bottle of whiskey. They were outliers. Most women faded into the dust of history, buried beside babies, forgotten farms, or violent men. If you thought the Wild West was hard when standing still, try surviving while moving. Whether you're a lone rider heading to Santa Fe or part of a wagon train pushing westward in search of land, gold, or simply escape, the journey itself becomes a gauntlet of suffering and slow death. The road is endless. Dust chokes your lungs. The sun cooks your skin during the day, and the night freezes your marrow, all while your muscles cramp from days in the saddle or walking beside wagons that creak like dying beasts. You'll cross deserts with no water, mountains with no paths, and rivers that sweep away oxen, wagons, and children alike. Your wagon may break an axle in the middle of nowhere, and you'll have to cut down a tree, carve a new one, and pray it holds, all while hoping you're not ambushed by bandits or caught in a storm. Your horses, they're exhausted, half-starved, and spook at every rattle, especially snakes, which could spook your entire caravan off a cliff. There are no maps worth trusting, and compasses often lie thanks to mineral-rich terrain. And if you get sick, which you will, there's no medicine, no antibiotics, no help, just a choice between lying in the wagon, groaning until you die, or being left behind to save the group time. People bury their dead along the trail with shallow graves and no markers. Entire families vanish into dust, their names remembered only by the travelers who survived long enough to forget them. The journey is not heroic. It is not a montage. It is an act of grit, desperation, and decaying hope. And for most people, it didn't end with a new life. It ended with a slow death on the side of a dirt road, under the open sky, with nothing but wind to witness your final breath. Let's say you take a bullet in the leg, or you fall from your horse and snap your arm in two. Congratulations. Now you get to meet the frontier doctor. Don't expect antiseptic gloves or even basic hygiene. What you'll likely get is a man with blood already on his apron, sweat on his brow, and tools that haven't been cleaned since the last poor soul bled out on the table. Surgery that's done on the kitchen floor or a saloon table, and anesthesia is whatever bottle of whiskey you can slam back before you black out. They'll hold you down with brute force, saw through flesh and bone with a rusty blade, and hope you don't go into shock. Infection, that's just part of the package. Antibiotics don't exist yet, so if you don't die of blood loss, tetanus might take you in a few days. A simple toothache could spread infection to your jaw and up into your brain. Doctors carried arsenic, mercury, and opium as treatments. They prescribe laudanum for everything from a broken rib to menstrual cramps, and laudanum was just alcohol mixed with opium. So you either felt better or stopped caring altogether. There were no hospitals, just infirmaries, which were often converted barns or tents that smelled of hay, mold, and old pain. Childbirth. A woman would lie on a straw mattress while another woman boiled water and prayed. Midwives did what they could, but with no sterile equipment. 1 in 5 births ended in death, and not just for the child. The average person in the Wild West didn't die from dramatic shootouts. They died screaming in a back room because their leg was amputated with no morphine, and a half-drunk man yelling, "Hold him tighter." Let's not pretend the Wild West was fair. It wasn't. If you weren't white, your odds of surviving the day dropped even lower, often to zero. Native American tribes were being displaced, slaughtered, and betrayed by broken treaty after broken treaty after broken treaty. Many had lived on the land for centuries, but with the arrival of settlers, they were labeled savages and pushed to the edge of extinction. Whole communities were wiped out, not just by war, but by disease, starvation, and forced relocation. African Americans, some of whom moved west after emancipation, faced open racism, exclusion, and violent threats, while some became successful cowboys, farmers, or even lawmen. They lived under constant danger, because the sheriff that shook your hand at noon might turn a blind eye to your lynching at midnight. Chinese immigrants, who helped build the Transcontinental Railroad, were treated as subhuman, beaten, underpaid, excluded from towns, and often massacred in outright pogroms. Women were treated like property. Native Americans were hunted like animals, and anyone who didn't fit the dominant mold of white male and armed was seen as disposable. The West was not a melting pot. It was a pressure cooker, and it burned most who stepped in. If you think riding a horse across the prairie sounds romantic, you probably never spent 18 hours in a saddle while your legs go numb and your thighs bleed from chafing. Cowboy life was endless, repetitive, and brutally physical. You'd wake before dawn, eat cold beans or jerky, then spend the entire day herding cattle that don't want to be herded, in weather that doesn't care if you survive. There's no glory in it, just dust in your lungs, blisters on your hands, and the constant stench of manure. Your boots are never dry, your clothes are never clean. You sleep outside with a blanket that smells like horses, using your saddle as a pillow, while insects bite your face and coyotes howl nearby. And if there's a stampede, you have seconds to react. Thousands of pounds of panicked cattle can crush men to pulp. Lightning storms roll in out of nowhere, striking metal stirrups, tree branches, and sometimes even riders.
There's no weather forecast, no safe shelter, just wide open plains and hope. You eat what you can carry. You fight boredom, exhaustion, and disease. You risk snakebite, broken bones, and angry landowners who don't want your herd anywhere near their crops. Cowboys were not glamorous. They were underpaid, underfed, overworked, and if they made it to the next town alive, they might blow their wages on whiskey and cards just to forget how much they hated every minute of it.
If bandits, bullets, and disease don't get you, nature might. The Wild West is a landscape that looks beautiful from afar until it kills you. Thunderstorms crash down with hail, the size of fists. Flash floods rip through canyons with no warning, and blizzards bury entire camps before dawn. Dust storms whip across the plains like sandpaper from hell, choking horses, blinding riders, stripping paint from buildings. You can die of exposure in under an hour. A man caught out in the sun without water can become delirious and dead by sunset. At night, the temperature drops so fast it can crack wood and kill in your sleep. Fires spread fast across dry scrubland, turning entire ranches into infernos before the first bucket of water can be tossed. Rivers that look calm can hide deadly currents. Mountains that seem climbable are filled with loose rock, sudden drops, and freezing winds. Even the plants want you gone. Cactus spines that infect wounds, poisonous berries that look like trail snacks, and brush that cuts your legs to ribbons. You step outside for a breath of fresh air and realize the air wants you gone just as much as everything else. If you came to the Wild West dreaming of striking gold, buying land, or starting fresh, you're about to get slapped by a hard truth. The economic game was already rigged, and not in your favor, unless you had connections, cash, or sheer dumb luck. The odds of making it were worse than finding a needle in a haystack while the haystack is on fire. Most jobs were seasonal, brutal, and paid just enough to keep you barely alive. Miners worked 12-hour shifts in darkness, choking on coal dust and swinging picks at walls that might collapse at any moment. Farmers had to break ground by hand, plant with primitive tools, and pray that locusts, drought, or rustlers didn't wipe them out before harvest. Land speculators and railroads were buying up everything, and they weren't interested in your dream of a cozy log cabin. Even if you scraped together enough money to buy land, you had to register it with corrupt officials who could change the rules or lose your papers. And suddenly your homestead became someone else's property. Banks were unstable, currency was inconsistent, and inflation could turn your life savings into worthless paper by the time you reached the next town. You could try gambling, and many did, but most lost. The poker tables weren't friendly games. There were shark tanks filled with card shops, cheats, and loaded revolvers. Lose too much, and you wouldn't just be broke, you'd be dead. The American dream existed, but it was guarded by wolves, and if you didn't have teeth, you starved. Everyone knows the legend. Prospectors rushing west to strike gold, digging into the earth with nothing but hope, a pickaxe, and a mule. But what they don't tell you is that most of them died poor, broken, and alone. For every man who found a nugget the size of a walnut, 1,000 dug through mud, frozen rivers, and cliff faces for months, only to find nothing but fool's gold and regret. Mining towns sprang up overnight and vanished just as fast, leaving behind empty shacks, collapsed tunnels, and graves marked with rocks. The water was poisoned with mercury, used to separate gold from silt, and the air in the mines was filled with dust that turned lungs into cement. Tunnels caved in regularly, and when they did, no one had the tools or time to dig you out. If you struck gold, you became a target for con men, claim jumpers, and violent thieves. The saloon owners and bankers always got their cut, whether you wanted to give it or not. Even if you cashed out, you had to transport your gold across hundreds of miles of outlaw-infested land, hoping your horse didn't die or your wagon didn't get ambushed. Gold fever didn't build fortunes for most. It built coffins. Trust was a rare commodity in the Wild West, rarer than water, gold, or a good night's sleep. The stranger you shared a fire with tonight might slit your throat while you snored and ride off with your horse, your boots, and your name. Men changed identities like shirts. A murderer in Kansas could be a preacher in New Mexico by next week. Towns didn't have photographs of outlaws, just hand-drawn sketches and vague descriptions. The guy who says he's a deputy might be wearing a stolen badge. The saloon girl who flirts with you might be distracting you, so her partner can empty your saddlebags. You don't trust anyone, not even the bartender who waters down your whiskey and keeps a sawed-off under the counter. Families could be split apart by land disputes, rival gangs, or cattle wars. There were no background checks, no phone calls, no written records. The only thing that proved who you were was your ability to survive long enough to matter. The price for being naive was often fatal. In a world without mercy, the kind-hearted died first. Think it's just the towns that are dangerous. Try stepping out on the open trail. You're not 5 miles out of Dodge before you see the buzzards circling, a silent warning that someone died on this path, maybe hours ago. Highwaymen and outlaws control the back roads, hiding in rocks, brush, and abandoned mines. They don't ask for your wallet. They ask for everything. Your horse, your gun, your boots, your coat, and if they're feeling generous, your life. Jesse James wasn't a myth. Neither were the Daltons, the Benders, or the countless nameless gangs who robbed stagecoaches, raided farms, and left bodies behind like litter. There were no police patrols, no mounted search parties. If you disappeared on the road, you were gone, just another ghost swallowed by the prairie. People traveled in armed groups because going solo was a death wish. And even if you were in a wagon train, you weren't safe. Outlaws struck at night, stole horses, burned supplies, and vanished before dawn. You couldn't ride fast enough to escape them. You could only pray they weren't bored enough to find you. If you thought justice in the Wild West was slow, fair, or civilized, let's disabuse you of that fantasy. The law was performative violence with a moral hat on. You didn't get trials. You got mobs. Someone accuses you of theft. The town gathers. Someone points a finger. You're thrown in a crude cell, and by morning there might be a rope hanging from the old oak tree. Lynchings weren't rare. They were entertainment. Entire families came out to watch hangings like it was a Sunday social. Kids ran between legs. Vendors sold pies, and justice was carried out with no judge in sight. Even if you made it to a trial, the judge was often drunk. The jury was made up of people who hated outsiders, and your defense was just your word against whoever shot first. Corruption ran deep. If you had money or friends, you walked free. If you were poor, foreign, or unlucky, you swung. People were executed for things as small as stealing a horse or looking at someone's wife too long. And once the mob had a taste for blood, it didn't stop until it saw feet dangling. Horses are not pets. Out here, they're your car, your livelihood, your lifeline. Lose it, and you're stranded. Hundreds of miles from safety, surrounded by dust, predators, and the slow churn of death. A stolen horse doesn't just mean inconvenience. It means doom. That's why stealing one is worse than murder in some places. No trial, no forgiveness. You're caught, with another man's horse. You hang. The body swings from a tree by noon, and the saddle gets sold by sundown. Vigilante justice is swift, and everyone's looking for someone to blame when their mount vanishes. Doesn't matter if you found it wandering. Doesn't matter if it was given to you by a liar. All that matters is ownership. And the mob believes the man with the loudest voice. Horses get branded, but brands get forged. Trails get erased in the dust. More than one man has woken up to find his horse gone, and a posse blaming him for stealing someone else's. When the rope goes around your neck, your last words won't matter. No one's listening. They're just making an example of you, so the next fool thinks twice before touching another man's reins. There's no safe season. Summer means heat stroke, dust, and water so scarce it's rationed like gold. Winter brings frostbite, black ice, and frozen livestock. Spring invites floods, landslides, and swarms of insects. Fall lures wild animals closer to your camp in search of food. Shelter is primitive, often little more than canvas tents or wooden huts chinked with mud. Wind seeps through cracks, rain drips through the roof, snow builds until the structure groans and sometimes collapses in the night. But it's not just the sky turning against you. The ground isn't kind either. Worms infest meat, spoil food, and burrow into wounds. Rats chew through supplies, carry disease, and bite sleepers without fear. Soldiers returning from war bring bullet wounds, PTSD no one understands, and old grudges that erupt into gunfire in the middle of quiet towns. Former Confederates and Union loyalists sometimes find themselves under the same roof, watching each other like coiled snakes. Outlaws don't stop at borders, nor do memories. Old wars bleed into new rivalries. One man's past becomes another man's death sentence, and it only takes one story told over whiskey to turn an inn into a battlefield. Meals are monotonous, scarce, and dangerous. Spoilage is constant. Without refrigeration, meat turns foul within hours. Salted pork is the safest bet, but it's mostly fat, tastes like brine-soaked leather, and leaves you thirsty. Beans are reliable, but cause bloating and malnutrition if eaten daily without supplement. Bread molds quickly. Canned goods are rare and expensive, and the canning process is so primitive that botulism becomes an invisible killer. Foraged food might be poisonous. Mushrooms look friendly until your stomach cramps and you vomit blood. Berries that birds eat without issue might shut down human kidneys. Water is boiled when there's time, but most people don't bother. They drink from puddles, streams, or shared wells contaminated by animals and waste. Dysentery, typhoid, and parasites thrive. Stomach pain is constant, and vomiting is shrugged off as just another Tuesday. Teeth rot from poor diet. Gums bleed. Jaws swell. A tooth infection untreated for a week can reach the brain. No one is healthy. Everyone is slowly dying. You don't eat to nourish. You eat to delay death a few more days. Carrying a gun is essential, but it won't save your life. Misfires are common. Old black powder pistols jam, explode, or fail to fire when needed most. Reloading takes time, and in the seconds it takes to ram powder and ball into a muzzle, your enemy has already drawn his knife. Revolvers are better, but rare and costly. Ammunition is inconsistent. One batch might fire clean, another explodes in your hand. Gun oil is precious, but often forgotten. A rusty barrel can ruin your aim, or worse, send shrapnel into your face. Holsters are crude, quick draws are fiction. Fights are chaotic. There's no aiming down sights like a movie hero. Just panic, noise, smoke, and a desperate hope that your shot lands before his. People miss at 5 paces. People die from ricochets, from panic firing into crowds, from holding the gun wrong. Guns fail, knives slip, fists break. There's no such thing as a fair fight. The moment bullets fly, everyone is meat, and only luck decides who bleeds. The days between drama are long, dry, and silent. Isolation eats at the mind like rats in a corn bin. People go months without seeing strangers. Conversation dies. Laughter becomes rare. Books are limited to a Bible, a weathered almanac, and maybe a dime novel left behind by a traveler. Games are played with rocks, sticks, or scraps of paper. Letters come once a month, if ever, and news travels slowly. You might not hear about a war ending until years after the last bullet is fired. Idleness breeds paranoia. A cough in the night becomes a plague. A new face at the saloon sparks rumors of robbery. A missing chicken turns neighbor against neighbor. Men drink not just for pleasure, but to numb the madness of nothing happening. Women count the days until their husbands return from cattle drives or never return at all. Children grow up too fast, then run away to chase anything that isn't a sunset and a patch of dirt. Boredom in the West is its own predator, slow, silent, and all-consuming. Step inside most frontier structures, and you'll feel the creak of every nail, the draft of every unsealed crack, and the instability of walls that feel like they might collapse from a heavy sigh. Cabins are slapped together from logs, notched by hand, sealed with mud, horsehair, or whatever substance can slow the wind. Roofs leak, doors warp in the sun and freeze shut in winter. Floors are dirt or loose planks. Most homes are one-room shacks where 6 people eat, sleep, argue, and die. Inns and taverns are barely better. Sometimes the floors above the bar buckle under the weight of too many boots, and the boards below them carry the stink of unwashed bodies and spilled blood. A barn might double as a church on Sunday, a courtroom on Monday, and a jail cell by nightfall. Every building creaks like a ship in a storm. In mining towns, entire rows of saloons lean together like drunks, propped up by scrap timber and wishful thinking. Chimneys collapse. Walls catch fire from a tipped lantern. Lightning strikes shingle roofs, and there's no fire brigade coming. The people rebuild again and again, not because they expect permanence, but because they've accepted that nothing in the West is meant to last. There are no vaccines, no public health announcements, no understanding of how germs really work. When someone coughs in the general store, it's not just annoying, it's a warning bell that a fever might be about to rip through town like wildfire. Smallpox, cholera, tuberculosis, diphtheria. These aren't stories from the past. They're regular visitors in the frontier. The water that cools your lips might carry the seed of your death. One infected person on a wagon train can wipe out an entire group before the next watering hole. Quarantine doesn't work when no one can afford to stop moving. The sick are left behind or buried where they fall. Townsfolk are suspicious of travelers, terrified of steamships and rail cars that carry more than just passengers. Doctors blame bad air or personal weakness. Children die suddenly and are buried in shallow graves before their names are ever written down. Graveyards grow faster than cities. People wear garlic, carry silver, or hang charms in windows to ward off illness. None of it works. The only cure is luck, and luck doesn't favor the poor, the hungry, or the new arrivals. Progress isn't always a blessing. The railroad promises opportunity, speed, and civilization, but it carves through the West like a blade. Mountains are dynamited, rivers are bridged, forests fall to saws that never sleep. Whole towns rise overnight near new tracks, then die just as quickly when the route shifts. Native lands are trampled, settlements overrun, and those who resist are branded enemies of progress. Workers live in squalid camps, sleeping under tops or in holes dug into the earth. Chinese laborers work the hardest, earn the least, and die the most, buried under rock slides, lost to explosions, or left behind when disease sweeps the tents. Rail barons grow fat, while laborers break backs for pennies. When the rails come, so does everything else. Saloons, brothels, gamblers, disease and crime. Settlers flood in, drawn by speed, and the wild frontier gets tamed, not with dignity, but with violence and displacement. Those who once survived by being hidden are now exposed. The land that once whispered only to the brave now roars with iron wheels, and the people who built the tracks are the first to be crushed by the very progress they created. Inside every town saloon, danger simmers, just beneath the clink of glasses and the twang of a fiddle. It's not a haven. It's a battlefield where alcohol replaces bullets until the real thing takes over. Men drink to forget pain, failure, or loneliness, and they drink past the point of sense. Tempers ignite over spilled drinks, bad cards or a sideways glance. Guns are pulled under tables, knives flash from boot heels. The barkeep hides a shotgun below the counter, not for show, but because he's used it before. Card games end in blood. Disputes over debts are settled with fists that end up slamming faces into piano keys or smashing bottles against skulls. Prostitutes are as likely to be victims as they are survivors. Violence is a constant backdrop, a dance that everyone knows the steps to, even if they've never drawn a gun before. The floor is stained, the air choked with cigar smoke, and the stories that come out of the saloon are never clean. Outside, the church bells might ring, but inside, the law takes a back seat to survival. No one walks into a saloon expecting peace. They walk in expecting heat, sin, and the chance they might not walk back out. You stake a claim. You build a fence. You file the paperwork with a local clerk who might be drunk, corrupt, or dead next week. But land in the Wild West isn't tamed by signatures. It's claimed by force. Homesteaders find themselves surrounded by enemies, ranchers who run massive herds and resent fences, mining companies that want what lies beneath your soil, and governments who rewrite territory lines as often as cattle change direction. Conflict is constant. Fences are cut, crops are trampled, livestock is poisoned or stolen, and if you try to fight back, you're outgunned and outnumbered. Even other settlers are a threat. Squatters move in and dare you to evict them. Surveyors redraw boundaries, and suddenly you're trespassing on your own land. Native Americans, long removed by force, sometimes return to find graves disturbed and sacred sites built over. The land remembers, even if the maps don't. Men die for acres. Families are buried on the property they tried to own. Titles burn in cabin fires. Lineages vanish in droughts. No patch of earth is truly safe, and every inch of it is soaked in the blood of those who tried and failed to claim it. The water is scarce. Soap is homemade or non-existent. Baths are a luxury that costs more than a meal in many towns, and when they are available, they're little more than a tin tub of lukewarm, reused water in a back room behind the saloon. You're lucky if it's not gray by the time it's your turn. You strip down, sink in, and pretend the floaters brushing your thigh aren't lice from the last man. Clothes go unwashed for weeks. Shirts are stiff with sweat, blood, and dust. Pants are patched until the original fabric is just memory.
You sweat through the day, sleep in your stink, and repeat it until even your horse shifts when you come close. Hair gets matted, beards grow wild, and fingernails turn black from earth and blood. Women boil water when they can, but there's never enough for a proper scrub. They wash their faces with cloths soaked in vinegar or stale beer. Children go barefoot, catching splinters and infections from every step. Hygiene is a myth, and the word clean becomes meaningless. You aren't aiming to be clean. You're just hoping not to smell worse than the corpse someone buried behind the barn last week.
Justice in the West is crude, fast, and deadly. But when towns do manage to keep someone alive long enough to jail them, the cell is often a wooden box with iron bars that wouldn't hold a determined goat. Some towns don't even have that. They dig a pit, drop the prisoner in, and cover it with grates, or leave a single man to stand guard with a shotgun and shaky hands. There are no rehabilitation programs, no legal defense teams. A trial, if it happens, is a matter of public amusement. Prisoners beg for water. They rot in their own filth. Some chew through their boots out of hunger or madness. Rats visit nightly. Bugs come at dawn. Disease doesn't need a key to get in, and the longer you stay inside, the better the odds someone comes to drag you out. Not for a pardon, but for a lynching. No judge will stop them. No mayor will care. The jail is not a place for justice. It's a waiting room for execution or escape, and both usually involve blood. Maps lie. Trails shift. A path that was safe last week might be a canyon of bones. Today, there are no signs, no mile markers, no guarantees. You travel by instinct, rumor, and stars. Stagecoaches get stuck in mud, tip over in windstorms, or break axles 3 days from the nearest help. Bandits mark routes with symbols carved into trees, invisible to the untrained but clear as letters to those who ride under moonlight. Postal riders vanish in the middle of open plains. Wagon wheels explode from hitting hidden rocks. Sand buries tracks so deep that you lose direction after a single wrong turn. Travelers go mad from circles, following their own tracks for miles without realizing they've already passed that dead tree 4 times. Desperation leads some to split up, a decision that often ends in tragedy. When you stray from the caravan, you're alone, and when you're alone, the West eats you. Buzzards circle long before the body cools. Travelers say a prayer for your soul and dig a shallow grave if there's time. Most keep riding. The trail doesn't wait for the weak. Fire gives light, heat, and hope, but it also kills faster than bullets, and more completely than disease. Wooden buildings packed tight together, dry brush lining the outskirts, high winds roaring down from the hills. All it takes is a single ember kicked loose from a stove, a spilled lantern, or a cigar dropped after too much whiskey. A whole town can burn in under an hour. There's no fire department, no hydrants, no alarms, but screaming voices and the smell of panic. Buckets form lines, but the water's low and the flames are faster. People flee with what they can grab, sometimes just the clothes on their backs. Some don't flee at all. They try to fight it and disappear in the smoke. Cattle stampede. Wagons are consumed in seconds. Walls explode from the heat, showering splinters into the air like arrows. Ash rains down for miles, falling on survivors like silent guilt. The towns rebuild again, but never the same. The smell of scorched dreams lingers. Fire is respect. Fire is fear. You cook with it, warm with it, pray by it, but it always waits to destroy. One careless breath, and everything you ever built is gone. Every frontier town has a church. Sometimes it's just a cross nailed to a barn. Other times, it's the tallest building, whitewashed and proud, with a bell that cracks the silence on Sundays. The preacher wears boots and a revolver under his robes. His Bible is worn at the corners. His sermons filled with thunder and brimstone. People come in desperate to confess, to beg, to cry, but they rarely leave feeling lighter. There are no miracles here, only warnings, only rules. God forgives, they say, but the West does not. Religion offers a brief moment of peace, a chance to believe that suffering means something. But when the sermon ends and the door swings shut behind you, the same dirt waits outside, the same hunger, the same enemies. Funerals outnumber weddings. Baptisms are quick, done in horse troughs or creeks, before winter takes the water. The church might offer bread if there's any to spare. It might hide a fugitive for a night. But faith doesn't stop bullets, and God doesn't always answer fast enough. You go because it's habit, because there's nowhere else to go, because in a world built on pain, even empty hope is still hope. Childhood is a concept, not a reality. Kids in the Wild West work as soon as they can walk, fetching water, feeding animals, hauling wood, keeping fires going, scaring off birds from the corn. They don't play with toys. They play with bones, sticks or stones, and sometimes not at all. Their games mimic survival, pretending to ride cattle, shoot bandits, cook imaginary food over real ashes. There's no time for dreams. By 10, they're driving wagons. By 12, they're firing rifles. By 13, they've seen more corpses than birthdays. Illness takes siblings in the night, and funerals are often the first social gathering they attend. They witness childbirth before they can spell it, and see death before they know how to understand it. School is a luxury if it exists. A traveling teacher might show up, teach with a single book for 20 kids, and vanish after a season. Most never learn more than how to write their name. If that, they age fast, not in their bodies, but in their eyes. The weight of survival robs them of wonder. Laughter exists, but it's cautious. Joy flickers in moments. A new pair of boots, a peach from a wagon, a horse that doesn't buck. Then it vanishes. They don't become adults. They just stop being children. Romance in the West isn't candlelight and poetry. It's two people deciding they're less likely to die if they stick together. Courtship is brief, a glance at the well, a shared chore, an exchange of words during a barn raising. If a man owns land, he needs help to work it. If a woman is alone, she needs a protector. Feelings come later, or not at all. Marriage is less about compatibility and more about economic stability. A good match means someone who won't drink all the profits or die at the first winter frost. Wedding ceremonies are quick, often in someone's kitchen. The vows interrupted by a crying baby or a knock at the door. Rings are optional. The union is marked by labor, not celebration. A woman might give birth within a year, maybe sooner. Each child is a blessing and a risk. Another mouth to feed, another body vulnerable to the cold. Husbands might disappear on cattle drives or never return from the mines. Wives might die in childbirth, leaving the man to raise children in a home that still smells of her. Widowers remarry within weeks, not out of callousness, but necessity. Love, when it comes, is quiet, found in survival, in shared chores, in not having to face the night alone. There is no end game in the Wild West. No pensions, no rest homes, no peace. You work until your back breaks, your lungs give out, or your eyesight fades, and you mistake a rattlesnake for a bootlace. The old are not respected for their wisdom. They're pitied, sometimes tolerated, and often ignored. An aged rancher with a bad hip slows down the herd. A blind trapper is a liability. A grandmother who can't cook or sew is dead weight in the winter. Elders who cannot contribute are quietly set aside. They sleep by the fire and wait for the cold to carry them off. Some wander into the hills, never to return. Others are left behind when a wagon train must move faster to beat the snow. Rare are the men who reach 60. Rare are still the women who live beyond childbirth and famine. Those who do survive become ghosts in their own homes, watching the young repeat the same mistakes, the same losses, and clinging to the same hopes. They have no legacy except worn tools, broken fences, and the stories no one stays quiet long enough to hear. Death isn't feared, it's expected. A release from labor. The only form of retirement the West offers is a shallow grave and a sky full of indifferent stars. Freedom in the West isn't the freedom to flourish. It's the freedom to suffer without interference. You can own land until someone with more guns decides you can't. You can speak your mind until it offends someone faster on the draw. You can be whoever you say you are, because no one's checking, but everyone's judging. No one owes you protection. No one offers you comfort. You are free to live or die, to fight or run, to build or burn. That freedom attracts dreamers, runaways, criminals, visionaries, and fools. It is intoxicating, it is beautiful, and it is brutal. For every man who carves a future from dust, there are 50 buried beside their unfinished cabins. For every woman who opens a business, there are 10 who vanish into brothels or graves. The West was not made for comfort. It was made for conflict. It rewards risk and punishes hesitation. It celebrates survivors, not saints. It doesn't care how much you want it, only what you're willing to endure. And that's why you, the modern viewer with central heating, running water, and antibiotics, wouldn't last a day. Not because you're soft, not because you're weak, but because the Wild West doesn't care about you, and never did. Abandonment is the final chapter for most frontier towns. The gold vein dries up, the water turns bad, the railroad reroutes, a disease sweeps through, and the people scatter like leaves in wind. Structures stand, but decay begins immediately. Roofs collapse under snow, window panes shatter in windstorms. Dust settles where laughter used to live. Doors bang in the breeze. Horseshoes still nailed to thresholds. Cribs stay full of dry blankets. Poker tables remain mid-game. A whiskey bottle tipped on its side. It's not ghosts that linger. It's memory. Evidence of lives once lived, of people who gambled everything and lost it, not in a gunfight, but in a slow, silent surrender to the land itself. Coyotes walk the same paths children once played on. Rattlesnakes coil in outhouses. Churches still smell faintly of wax and fear. Some visitors come to photograph it, others to steal what hasn't rotted. But the silence isn't peaceful. It's a warning. These towns don't whisper, "Come see." They scream, "Get out while you can." Survival in the Wild West isn't just physical. It's mental. The men who made it to old age, the ones who weren't buried under collapsed mines or torn apart by animals, often carried wounds that didn't bleed but never closed. PTSD wasn't diagnosed, but it was everywhere. Veterans of the Civil War, Indian Wars, cattle wars, they all bore the same 1,000-yard stare. Wives lost to fever, children who froze to death in bed, friends murdered for a few dollars and a horse. The survivors didn't boast. They got quiet, they drank, they rocked on porches and flinched at thunder. Some wrote diaries, others carved names into canyon walls, or stared at fires long after they died out. Survival meant carrying every horror, every betrayal, every near-death moment like stones in a saddlebag. Many ended their lives early, not with a bullet always, but with a slow withdrawal from hope. The West might let you live, but it wouldn't let you forget. The bones of the Old West lie beneath highways, under shopping malls, behind historical plaques. The landscape is quieter now, tamed, trimmed, irrigated. But the spirit hasn't gone. Ranches still operate with the same brutal hours. Oil towns rise and fall with the same speed as gold camps once did. Storms still tear down houses. Water is still fought over. Guns are still drawn in places the law can't quite reach. Modern convenience masks the old pain. But the land doesn't forget. Locals know where the graves are. Hikers stumble across rusted rifles, broken boots, and burned wagons swallowed by sagebrush. The wind still howls the same songs, and every so often a wildfire, a flood or a drought strips away the illusion of safety, reminding anyone who listens that this land doesn't belong to us. We are only guests. The Wild West didn't end. It evolved, and those who forget how savage it once was are the first to get caught off guard when it bares its teeth again. There's no national system of justice out here, no forensic teams, no Miranda rights, no one dialing for backup. The law, when it exists, wears a single badge and carries a revolver heavier than his patience. Sheriffs aren't always brave, just stuck. Some are idealists trying to hold back a flood with their bare hands. Others are ex-outlaws themselves, handed power by towns too desperate to care about past sins. Deputies might be appointed on the spot, handed a gun and a target with no training beyond don't shoot yourself. The jail is a wooden cell that doubles as a drunk tank, an execution chamber, and a place for the sheriff to nap between gunfights. Justice is arbitrary. A stolen chicken might get you hanged if the victim is powerful. A murder might be ignored if the body disappears in the canyon. Corruption is everywhere because temptation is constant and pay is non-existent. When the sheriff dies, his badge is nailed to the saloon wall until someone brave or foolish takes it down. And even if you're innocent, it only takes one finger pointing at you to change your fate. Truth is irrelevant. Perception is king, and the man with the badge is just as afraid as you. In the Wild West, identity is fluid, but it also makes you a target. A northerner in the South is watched. A southerner in the North is blamed. A Mexican, a Chinese rail worker, a black cowboy, an Irish immigrant, all face hatred baked into the soil. You can change your name, your clothes, your story, but your accent, your skin, or your reputation follows you like a bloodhound. Every handshake might be followed by suspicion. Every favor might be a trap. Alliances shift faster than rivers flood. Being from the wrong place, believing the wrong thing, or just speaking at the wrong time can get you killed in a town you just rode into. Religion, politics, and skin color aren't debated. They're used as excuses for action. Sometimes it's a fist, sometimes it's a knife, sometimes it's a noose. Communities form tight circles, and outsiders are only welcome when they bring money, goods, or labor. And even then you're never family. You're tolerated until you're not. The frontier is wide, but not open, and there's no fence tall enough to keep hate out. The wilderness isn't empty. It's watching. Wolves trail wagon trains at a distance, looking for the weak to peel off. Bears tear through food supplies. Mountain lions stalk children who wander too far from the fire. Snakes warm themselves beside your boots while you sleep. Scorpions crawl into blankets. Insects bite until skin boils. Your livestock are targets. Calves vanish in the night. Chickens are decimated by hawks. And if you go out to find the predator, you might not come back. Fire keeps some threats away, but hunger trumps fear in every creature. Even the tamed animals can turn. A startled horse kicks without warning. A mule might bolt off a cliff. Dogs, loyal though they are, die young from starvation or disease. Nature isn't a backdrop. It's the primary character, and it's not interested in your dreams of prosperity. You're just meat, bones, and noise. Another warm body, stumbling through its domain. You may carry a gun, you may have a torch, but those are only useful if you're awake. And in the West, the danger rarely waits until morning. The stories told about the West are often clean, polished, or outright false. Heroes wear white hats. Villains are cartoonish. Settlers are brave. Natives are savages. And everything wraps up in a shootout at high noon. But the real West was full of people whose names were never written down. Midwives who birthed 10 children in a blizzard and died of infection. Blacksmiths who worked through fever. Mothers who buried 4 babies before the spring thaw. Men who built towns that fell apart before maps were drawn. No one tells their stories. Their graves are unmarked. Their letters were never published. Their lives were hard, honest, and often short. They didn't ride for glory. They didn't seek fame. They survived, and the land they tried to claim swallowed them up, erased their sweat, buried their bones, and left nothing behind but stories half remembered by drunkards at the bar. The Wild West didn't just kill people, it erased them. And that's the cruelest thing of all. Not the dying, the forgetting.